Our group once had the broliest paladin barbarian ever. His name was Ʀᴏ. The half-orc paladin of insert homebrew god of fair fighting here. Ʀᴏ's background was that he was a member of a barbarian tribe that had been given as a baby as a gift to a missionary by his tribe, as a sign of peace between their tribes, to go marry to one of their leader's daughters. Since the church leader had no daughters, he made him a son of the cloth, so to speak. Now Ʀᴏ wasn't that bright, but he was strong as a team of oxen, used a two-handed club bigger than most men, and could, given time and effort, find evil simply by watching the entire world. Picking up the man who detected as evil and then bellowing at him without stopping for hours on end until the guy broke down. He was utterly patient and unstoppable by any normal means beyond total bodily dismemberment in his pursuit of justice. His class was basically the GM choosing to ignore alignment requests. So he was a paladin with levels in a homebrew paladin barbarian prestige class which broke down to rage against the dying light. Now this was in a game with mostly TN and evil fucks. Only he and I were actually good. I was a CG cleric Rouge X gang member turned to god who spent most of his time boozing and whoring, but who had been assigned to Ʀᴏ to keep him out of trouble. The other player characters included a CE blackguard girl, a TN druid, an E assassin who had huge daddy issues, and a monk of the god of tyrants. We met when they were sent to hunt us down and stop me preaching the word. Ʀᴏ beat each of them unconscious and, for some reason, got it into his head that, since they were still alive after he'd beaten them, our god wanted them alive and to change their ways. Over the course of the game, he slowly, through sheer stubborn-ass will, turned them up the alignment spectrum. The monk became LG and dropped his god for hours. The assassin took a few levels in ranger and saw Ʀᴏ as the father he never had. If his dad had been 6'8" and green, the druid remained the same but stopped working for assholes. The blackguard though, she was the most entertaining to watch. You see, her player wasn't an ass, but he was a power gamer and he took flaws he never thought would come into it. One day early on, we come across her home village, Ʀᴏ leading the procession in chains and keeping an eye on the criminal scum to avoid any incidents. We go to the inn, and buy a room. The innkeep takes one look at the blackguard, blanches and leaves in a hurry, telling us to take the room for free. 10 minutes later there's a mob outside. Apparently the blackguard has a really angsty background involving her brother being a dick to her and ect. Needless to say, when she left a mark on several people in the village, including the mayor's son who was a prick and one of the main reasons she was a self-serving, black-hearted bitch. Ʀᴏ goes outside to see what the fuss is. They demand her head. Ʀᴏ takes one look at the crowd and says no, she is mine and I will teach her to be good. The crowd is incredulous and demands proof. Ʀᴏ carries her outside over his shoulder. Ʀᴏ puts her down next to him and in front of the crowd, takes off her chains and says, say you're sorry for what you did to them. Never say you're sorry for what you did. You hurt a lot of innocent people apparently. I couldn't care less how many innocent people were who crack as he backhands her across the stage. Then walks over and picks her up by the shoulders, looks her straight in the eye and yells, say you're sorry for hurting the innocent. Ʀᴏ has very high intimidate. Ʀᴏ rolls a 19. Ʀᴏ is a fucking scary half-orc sometimes. She bends in the face of his righteous fury for just a second. I'm sorry, but what he did to me, what who did, the mayor's so. Ʀᴏ turns towards the crowd and uses detect evil. 3 people turn up, the mayor, his son and the head of the guard. Turns out the plot hook for this was the mayor was meant to hire us to go hunt down some ex-convicts, who were actually people who had smacked his son about for screwing with their girlfriends after drugging them, so forth. And that the blackguard had the masochist disadvantage. She failed a will save and became obsessed with Ʀᴏ and his backhand of justice. And Ʀᴏ was one of the first people to actually listen to her when she said things like the mayor's son is a prick. So the obsession. The player decided, being a god-tier role player with no sense of shame when I see was going to fall in love with Ʀᴏ, which Ʀᴏ didn't notice until about 15 sessions later. When she confessed. Ʀᴏ's reaction, he sat there for a while and looked at the now TNX blackguard and said simply, if you learn to behave and be good, and you ask nicely, I might spank you, then nodded and continued on his way. By the end of the game, she was a paladin of that SM god, and in the final encounter, when she was offered a place at the beg's side if she turned her back on the party, she didn't because of Ʀᴏ and his sexy, half-orc love. Ʀᴏ fucking rocked. Anyone want to hear about his confrontation with the tyrant who challenged him to honorable duel? Well, the beg for the game was a king turned tyrant, being backed up by the god of tyrants, a long forgotten god, which basically meant that he wasn't worshipped actively. But anyone who was a tyrant counted as a worshipper of his, despite worshipping other gods. So he got auto cleric levels. The game was all about ʔzma and I going to this new, unknown country to try and spread the word of our religion at the start. Until we realized their king was a dickhead of the greatest magnitude. At which point, ʔzma got disgruntled by the evil in the air around him and decided that he was going to turn T and the rest of us were along for the ride on the righteous tidal wave that was ʔzma. After many epic adventures, the game comes to a climax with a revolt, led by ʔzma, me and the ranger assassin in the capital city, which pretty much failed. We were stuck behind a barricade, with the king's men raining hell down on us for days on end, us giving almost as good as we get, but there's too many of them. You know how it works when ʔzma sees the king watching from the sidelines, and bellows a challenge for leadership of the country at him. One of the king's laws was that you could challenge anyone for anything, might makes right. Now his entire army hears this challenge, and obviously they know he can't back down from it. So the king says sure, whatever, get my fucking huge sword and armor and let's do this, then your entire revolt and mine and it's off to the ball twisting implements with you all. Even the women, circle is drawn at neutral ground. The two parties meet, with the ex-Black Guard as ʔzma's second and the king's general as his second. Now the thing about this king and his relationship with the god is, he was the last tyrant alive at this time. And if there are no worshippers of a forgotten god, they are gone for good and a new one will appear when and as they are needed, and ʔzma is a fucking good fighter. So this god is shitting enough bricks to build New York. He tells the king to cheat, takes over him and puts on a few poisoned rings. When he shakes ʔzma's hand, schwink. -10 to STR and con. As well as being blinded and a few other mixed nasties in the form of liquid curses, ʔzma's greatest abilities, down the drain. Before ʔzma can call out this treachery, the king smacks him in the gob with his pommel and the fight begins. ʔzma does his best, but needless to say, he is getting fucked up bad. When the god king makes the mistake all tyrants make, he starts gloating, going on about how the weak are pathetic and don't deserve protection. About how men are wolves and here's the biggest motherfucking alpha wolf there is. About how good is stupid, honor is restraint and respect for others is pathetic. ʔzma is annoyed at the puny man dissing on his principles. ʔzma pulls a trick we've not seen in months of leveling, because he's never needed it. ʔzma righteous rages. Feats kick in, results are rolled, tables brought out. ʔzma is healed, back on full health, basically sweats the poison out and gives off a bellow that sends half the king's men running away with liquid fear running down the insides of their legs. A man possessed by a god itself stumbles at this bellow, this roar of anger against the sheer injustice of the world, and the fury against the darkness he and the man he possessed represent. That malicious evil that thinks it can get away with things because good men won't fight back or aren't smart enough to fight them. And then ʔzma brings up his weapon and stands over the fallen king for a moment, before saying 5 words. Get up and face me. He waits until his opponent stands, and then swings his club into him, breaking his entire shield arm in one hit as he tries to protect himself. The king screams out at his troops to fire on the battlefield. They do so. ʔzma asks the GM if he can roll divine intervention. He fails, but uses a once a day item to reroll twice and passes. The arrows and bolts stop in midair. The general tries to enter the arena and is boiled in his armor by the fire of the line that surrounds them, effectively disintegrating him in his suit as the god of fair battle himself looks down on this betrayal of his greatest warrior and goes, "No, this shall be a fair battle." ʔzma brings his weapon in again and drives the crowned helmet so deep into the man's head that it could never be removed from the body of the armor again, then stands bellowing in the circle. The god of tyrants tries to escape, taking no physical form, but ʔzma grapples and starts hitting it using Smite Evil. Literally holding and beating on a dying god down in the dueling ring using nothing but the force of his own righteousness and hatred of evil, and punches it in its evil face until it stops spasming, and finally disperses away. ʔzma was now king. ʔzma took the crown that his new generals offered him, and looked at it, and then nodded and said, "I'm not smart enough to be a king." ʔzma gave this away to his church, creating a council of 12 members, 6 clergymen, 6 randomly chosen peasants who each served for a maximum time, and he went back to the road. When asked why turned down this great offer, this chance to be a king, and have everything he wants, he answered, Because I do not need it, I have all I wish here. It is my place to fight evil face to face, not as a figurehead. I have evil before me, my weapon at my side, good and just friends to battle alongside, and the war eternal to battle in the name of my god. What more could make me happy? Aszma then moves on, with us all being dragged along in his wake. What happens next? I don't know. We're continuing the campaign in a few weeks after the GM has had a chance to rest and plan. Speak my name and I shall be summoned. Aszma's chronicler here, the cleric. This is going to be a long one, so hold on to your dicks. After the death of tyrants, the game wound down a bit. I say a bit because there was never the slaying of another god. Well, there was sort of, but I'll get to that soon. We each get a fancy new item. Aszma got the Fire of the Gods, which was a gem that allowed him to show anyone, at any time, his memories, and that burned with righteous fury. Acting as a holy subtype fire attack will, Blackguard got a dagger called the Tear of Faith. That was the tear of a dying god, which was a powerful thing. And basically had the power fuck you one time ever, where she could activate it and it would basically act as a plot device to let her do whatever she fancied for a while before it ran out of juice. Anyway, after completing the task at hand, with the death of the king, Aszma turned his eyes northwards, into the Forsaken Lands. A bit of backstory here, everything beyond a certain point, known as the Ice Wall, was part of a region known as the Forsaken Lands, where no civilization had ever managed to take root. Like most stereotypical frozen norths, it was almost inhospitable to civilized life. Filled with barbarians and few people who went over the wall came back. It was also Aszma's original homeland, a place he couldn't even remember, but he didn't know this and it's not important. Anyway, we traveled north, past the ice wall, past the dead glaciers, through the tribal hunting grounds of the Orcs and the Neanderthal. Bringing civilization as we did, or trying to each time we took a step forwards, there was a step back, as if the land itself refused to be tamed by mere mortal hands. While we're there, we learn of a god, the only god in the area. The Northernmost Wind. A cruel, sea god, that refuses to let its domain become tamed, and kills anything, man or beast, that dares try to carve its land to its will. So Aszma turns north once more. And we kept on going, Aszma leading the way, through mountain, through dale, over a frozen sea, complete with giant serpents and a frozen undead dragon. Because this place is like hell with ice skates and our GM has a hard-on for awesome set pieces. By this point we learn even more of the Northernmost Wind. It's the creature that fuels the cold of this place, and it is practically older than time itself, an ancient monster so old that its realm is part of every map ever created. The ice wall isn't the edge of its domain, it's the edge of its prison, and all within are its toys, to keep it distracted. Aszma wishes to see these people free. My cleric by this point has decided to start focusing on fire-themed attacks, to take advantage of the cold, and most of the group has done the same. Now, the Blackguard is suffering badly from the cold because she was a half-elf, spindly little thing, and because platomale heavy furs were too much for her. Needless to say, by the time we reached the mountains, we were a different party to when we entered. This wasn't civilized lands, this was over the edge of the map. And to become a barbarian was the only way to face it. Aszma by this point has gone from nearly 100% paladin to nearly 100% barbarian in looks, bit under the furs and bone club, after his original was sundered by a Neanderthal chieftain. He is still the ബ്രോ-ല-ഡിൻ we know and love. Anyway, between us, we managed to get further north than any civilized being had ever gone before, and we meet an entire new race that has managed to survive up here. They don't even have a name, they're basically humans, with 100% frost resistance and are hard as fuck. We meet them when a group of them ambush us by jumping out from about 10 foot of snow. Anyway, we manage to defeat them, and Aszma demands to be brought to their chieftain. Turns out these men mix with frost giants, as the leader is the largest frost giant we've ever seen. The guy is sitting on a throne, carved at the foot of a mountain that goes above the clouds. He's taller than most trees, and appears to be wearing leather armor that must have required an entire small herd of entourage to make. He's also so damn old that he can't even stand, and so wise that his beard has to be rolled up and kept in a basket next to him. "Why have you come?" the ancient behemoth asks, in a voice like the creaking wind. "I am Aszma, warrior of the south, and bane of tyrants. I have come to bring peace to this land. There is no peace in the northern lands. Go home to your caves and ice huts, however far south they are, young warrior." live long and happy, knowing that we of the north live and die, so that you may have peace from the god of ice and sorrow. Each year, he comes to face me, and each year, for eons, I have drawn equal with him, and now I am old, and he's still young. And I'll lose a little more each day, and the world grows a little darker. Go home, live, love, make merry, for most the world is cold but free. At which point, ʔzmar's character realizes two things. That the frost giant has never seen the south, as far as he knows, the frost touched the whole world. And then he uses detect good. And the frost giant glows like a beacon. A paladin beacon. The first paladin, ever, one who follows no god, one who probably birthed the first god of hope, using nothing but his actions. So old that he was forgotten before time began. ʔzmar looks at this ancient warrior, and kneels before him, paying respect to the founder of what would one day become the ideals that birthed the god, that his order followed. And then stands, and says, I am ʔzmar, slayer of tyrants, warrior for all free people, and so long as any are bound by chains, I will not go home. You, and your people, are bound to this place by duty. I will help you fulfill that duty, and he holds out the stone, and touches the tired, worn old hero of a giant, who has nothing to live for and has slowly given up on existence over the years. Thinking that all his efforts have come to nothing, all his good deeds simply ash in the wind. Who sees what ʔzmar has done, what the ideals that the giant have created have done, what the world of the south, the world he has never seen, are like, rich and vibrant and free and full of life. And the ancient creature weeps, his tears melting the frost of his beard, as he sees the beauty of what he has fought for. Even if he cannot fight anymore, he has seen it. And it was worth it. Now, I think at this point the GM expected ʔzmar to take the giant's place and title, as the first paladin, and take on the beast of the north. What happened was far more interesting. As the blackguard steps forward and says, ʔzmar, could I show him something? ʔzmar looks at her, and says he isn't sure it works like that, but she's willing to try anyway. I'm not sure what the old giant saw in her, maybe that she wished to one day be with ʔzmar, or that if he took the giant's place, he would never be with her, or all she saw in ʔzmar. Or all that was good in her now, but he nodded, and looked to ʔzmar. This seat is not yours to fill, he rumbled. ʔzmar is silent, then looks up. Then I will slay it with the hands of a man. The GM looks at him and Yuk says, well, that's all very well and badass, but how do you intend to kill a physical god? I mean, you killed one before, but this is an entire different loach. You sure you want to do this? It'll probably be a PK, I know, but ʔzmar would do it. Alright. ʔzmar looks back to the others and says, long ago, I bound you in chains to me. Since then, we have been so much, done so much, changed so much. This is my fight. As a paladin. And the others are silent for a moment, and the blackguard steps forward and says, it's my fight too. Then, girl secretly took levels in paladin, starting after she rose from being a blackguard. This is ʔzmar's fetish apparently, as he gives a dame girl look and they fist bump, as a couple. I step forward. I was never chained to you, and I think all of us can agree that we will follow you. So tough. ʔzmar grins a big, toothy half-orc grin. Then we begin the climb at dawn. GM is like, you do realize that this just means it'll probably be a TPK instead. Monk replies, we are not leave his side. Dawn next day. We are all freezing our asses off, and the giant has managed to unstick himself from his throne, and has acquired a set of plate mail. And a sword so large that you could break it down for smaller swords for an entire unit of men. His men see him get up and are all like, what's going on here? And the ranger stands atop his throne, taking a minute or so to climb up, and gives an incredible speech. I can't remember the whole details. It was like 5-6 minutes. On ʔzmar, on good, justice, freedom, the warmth of a newborn baby, hope, love, and all the things in the worth fighting for. And the entire tribe looks on confused as fuck. And one steps forward and says, so, we should come help you then? Gods no, you've all got to live through this. I was just explaining what ʔzmar is doing for you and what things will be like afterwards, so you have something to look forward to when we get back. And then he runs after the rest of us. Anyway, a lot of trail and tribulation later, on Frost Touch Mountain, as we came to know it, because the druid was shit at naming things, we arrive at the top, above the clouds. The GM describes this huge mead hall, carved from bones, sitting atop the mountain peak, so cold at the top that ice doesn't even form, so it's a clear day. So, we're cautious and we enter. Inside we find an entire hall of dead titans of various kinds, their skeletons slumped over the preserved tables, the entire place lit with torches. And on the throne at the head of the hall, sits a creature of pure ice, a woman carved from snow. A bit of exposition later, we find out that the creature is a female frost giant who was the first evil creature in the world, and used to be the wife of the paladin giant beforehand. And who ended an entire age when she murdered the primordial giants. We kinda hang back for a bit because he obviously doesn't have the heart to really fight her, and that's probably why she's still alive. And then the big twist comes out. Because he loves her, he'll hold her back, but he can't bring himself to end her. The compassion and love of a paladin that drives him to protect all won't let him kill his own wife. Because he knows she's still good in there somewhere. Despite her entire reason for falling being that she felt she wasn't her husband's equal, due to some throne problem. Fucked if remember. But it was a really petty reason that had snowballed into the source of all evil in the world, Pandora's box style. And it ended with her killing their entire race, the Titan giants apart from the two of them, then trying to take over the world because if she couldn't be warm and happy in bed with her hubby, no one could, and the entire world should suffer because it made her moist. ʔzma steps forward, before the giant. And doesn't bother with speeches. He just powers up and charges, with a screaming, animal bellow of pure hatred and disgust for the the monster before him. The fight lasts 3 rounds, before ʔzma is on 3 HP, but has managed to cut open her chest and stuff the red gem into her heart, thinking that it would change her nature. She ragdolls him across the room, and the fire of the gods, an item that literally represents all that is good and compassionate and virtuous about the world, shatters in her chest. The GM admits at this point that he's not sure we can win. He was expecting the PCS to accept the dying paladin's power and each become a deity. We're strong, we're not god strong. Then the Black Guard steps forward as the heartless ice woman mocks ʔzma. And she looks to the giant and says, I was once a woman like that before ʔzma offered me kindness. All the kindness in the world cannot change her back. She is not the woman you love anymore. As I am not the woman ʔzma despised, and offers him the dagger, while grabbing some of the shards of the now broken gem in hand as well for good measure. He hesitates and looks to her, then takes it, and it shatters. When the glow diminishes, he's young again, for an ageless being. Revived by the power of the dead god, returned to his old vim and vigor both internally and externally by the actions of the party. Hey, I never said it was an original or non-cliché story our GM ran. It had tyrant sorcerer kings, remember. He steps up, so does she. She brings her ice sword down. He parries and he grabs her and kisses her one last time, while using his own power to neutralize hers. Pure good, pure evil. Total mutual annihilation, if they were in equal amounts. Sadly he's not quite as good as she is a raging monster, so she becomes mortal as he dies in her arms. And we've all moved to protect ʔzma. ʔzma's player was totally happy to step down and let everyone else have the epic finish, since as he put it, I've already had 4 guys. Nail the bitch, and the Black God steps the fuck up, sword in hand. The GM starts a whole "we can rule together, I've seen the evil in your heart" speech. But the PC slaps her as soon as she says, I know the evil in your H, and responds angrily, you chose yourself over the man you loved because you wanted power and felt like you weren't his equal. You aren't even fit to call yourself evil. You're just a selfish bitch. That day, the origins and frozen heart of all evil in the world died. The Black Guard and ʔzma's holy symbols became blank, as the god of honor himself, who had never been able to end this monster and had sort of not talked about the horrors of the north, shamefacedly stepped down, unable to call himself their master. The first paladin is now a god, in setting, and ʔzma and the Black Guard are both minor living deities in his pantheon and amongst the northern tribes, while the northernmost wind, as an ideal, no longer as a person, is part of the dark pantheon. The GM ruled that after we broke her, the feedback was so powerful that it shattered the snow enchantment of the north. There's still evil in the world, as always, but the oldest evil in the world ended at our hands that day. Afterwards, ʔzma led the ice tribes south. As the water levels across the world rose, a bit inconvenient for the setting's version of Venice, but fuck em. Their god will look after them, and they're a bunch of Elendics anyway, and created a place for them to live, in the deep mountains, where a new civilization is rising. We've all agreed, the next game we're doing in this universe, we're all taking members of the ice tribes, who are trying to grow accustomed to this new world of warmth. not being eaten by dire ice wolves and so forth, and of course dealing with the after effects as old evils rise once more, awoken by the shock of their great-grand evil mother being shanked. But we can deal with it. Also, in the epilogue, Asmodic the Black Guard, his master shotgun weddinged him and they finally had a sprog, but Asmar's to play him, saying he didn't want the GM to make any exceptions for him and he'd rather make a whole new character so that Asmar can have his rest and you guys can be the biggest heroes next time while I hang back, same as he said he'd be a minor deity in the first Paladin's Pantheon, not the other way around despite the entire group's protests, because that'd be too much of a circle jerk for him. After all, as he put it, Asmar was just some random paladin who believed good, did good and fought for good. Nothing special. That's what paladins are, right? Because he's a bro like that. And because he has no fucking sense of perspective. If you haven't already, check out my Redbubble portfolio. You might just find something you like.
Just stop. Just stop it. Stop. No. Just stop it. It's time to stop! It's time to stop, okay? No more! Where the fuck are your parents? Who are your parents? I'm gonna call Child Protective Services. It's time to stop!